This one empath type brings avoidance to their knees. There is a specific type of empath that completely disrupts the usual dynamic with an avoidant partner, and it's not the overly giving empath, not the one who sacrifices everything, and definitely not the one who keeps chasing for validation. It's a different kind of presence entirely. A grounded, self-aware empath who feels deeply but refuses to abandon themselves in the process. And when an avoidant encounters this type of energy, something inside them shifts in a way they're not used to. Because avoidants are comfortable in a very specific pattern. They are used to being pursued, to being emotionally depended on, and then slowly pulling away when things feel too intense. They thrive in dynamics where the other person keeps reaching, keeps explaining, keeps trying to fix the connection. That pattern gives them control. It gives them space without consequence. And most importantly, it allows them to avoid confronting their own emotional limitations. But this one empath type breaks that pattern completely. Not through force, not through manipulation, but through something far more powerful, emotional self-respect. This empath doesn't chase when the avoidant withdraws. They notice it, they feel it, but instead of reacting impulsively, they pause. And that pause alone creates a disruption that the avoidant doesn't know how to handle. Because for the first time, their distance doesn't create pursuit. It creates silence. It creates space. And suddenly, the avoidant is left alone with their own emotions, without the usual distraction of someone trying to pull them back into connection. And that's where the discomfort begins. This empath type also doesn't over-explain their feelings. They communicate clearly, calmly, and directly. But they don't beg to be understood. They don't try to convince the avoidant to care. They simply express themselves and then step back, allowing the other person to either meet them or not. And that quiet confidence creates a different kind of pressure, one that comes from absence, not presence. Because when you stop overgiving, your energy becomes scarce. And what is scarce suddenly becomes valuable. The avoidant, who once felt suffocated by your emotional availability, now starts to feel the absence of it. And that absence triggers curiosity, and sometimes even anxiety, because it removes the safety net they were unconsciously relying on. This empath also has boundaries, not aggressive ones, not defensive walls, but calm, unwavering limits that are enforced through action, not words. If the avoidant becomes inconsistent, this empath doesn't argue endlessly. They step back. If communication becomes one-sided, they stop overinvesting. And over time, this creates a reality where the avoidant can no longer take the connection for granted. And here's where things start to change in a deeper way. Because avoidants are not used to losing emotional access. They're used to controlling distance, not experiencing it from the other side. So when this empath pulls back, not out of anger, but out of self-respect, it creates a reversal. The avoidant begins to feel what they usually make others feel. Uncertainty, distance, a lack of control. And for many avoidants, this is the moment where they start to come forward again. Not because they've suddenly become secure, but because something feels different, something feels less predictable, and that unpredictability draws them back in. But here's the truth that most people miss. This empath is not doing any of this to win the avoidant. They're not playing games. They're not trying to manipulate the outcome. They are simply no longer willing to lose themselves just to keep someone else. And that's what makes their energy so powerful. Because it's not rooted in fear. It's rooted in choice. They choose to stay when there is mutual effort. They choose to leave when there is emotional neglect. And they are fully prepared for either outcome. That level of emotional independence is rare. And it's something avoidants deeply feel, even if they don't consciously understand it. Because for the first time, they are faced with someone who doesn't need them to feel complete. Someone who won't chase them into intimacy. Someone who won't collapse under their distance. And that creates a mirror they can't easily escape. Some avoidants will rise to meet this energy, slowly opening up, slowly becoming more consistent. Not perfectly, but noticeably. because they feel the difference, but others won't. And this is the part where this empath remains unchanged. They don't try harder. They don't lower their standards. They don't wait indefinitely. They accept the reality in front of them and move on with clarity instead of confusion. And that is ultimately why this empath type brings avoidance to their knees, not because they control them, but because they remove the illusion of control entirely. They stop chasing. They stop overgiving. They stop abandoning themselves. And in doing so, they shift the entire dynamic. Because the moment you no longer fear losing someone, you stop behaving in ways that make you lose yourself. And that is the moment where everything changes, not just for the avoidant, but for you.